I'm Adam Moz, and this is Moz Models. Today, we're going to cover throttle cut, and particularly throttle cut for glow or nitro engines. On electric, you want your minimum throttle value. So, the throttle locks at your minimum value. There may be certain use cases where you want to bump it up in flight, but on the ground, you want it locked at that minimum throttle value so the prop will not spin as long as the throttle cut's on. With glow and gas, it's a little bit more complex than that because you have a throttle cut which cuts the engine, turns that engine off, and you have an idle position which is your normal on the ground, engine just barely ticking over. Now you may combine that idle position with an idle up as in Tech Tips episode 3. However, from a ground perspective, you need to be sure you can kill that engine on the ground with the flick of a switch, as well as have a steady and adjustable idle. Now, for the approach for gas and glow is a little bit different, and I should say actually the approach for ignition and glow is a little bit different because it's tied to the style of ignition, not necessarily the fuel type. A ignition converted methanol engine or glow engine works the same way as a gasser. In this case, you want your throttle cut actually turning your ignition off, preventing that engine from being able to run. On a glow engine with glow ignition, or for that matter a diesel engine if you happen to fly diesel, you want your throttle cut to completely close the barrel of the carb so that it prevents air from getting to the engine and therefore the engine from running. You then want your throttle cut off position being your idle position. You want that adjustable so you can adjust your idle. You want an adjustable idle on gas as well. And then you potentially want idle up on top of that. Now in Spectrum, and I'm just going to mention Spectrum easily, what you normally do is you set up your throttle cut and you set your throttle cut position to minus 130%. So your base throttle is minus 100, and then your throttle cut overextends to minus 130. That works very well in Spectrum because Spectrum, the throttle trim, is 0 at minus 100%. So if you're using throttle trim on Spectrum and you give it down trim, it'll go below minus 100%. ETHOS does not work the same way. ETHOS, your minus 100, is your base. So you have to combine two settings to get a glow or nitro engine set up correctly. And we're going to go through those. So first off, we have a brand new model. This has not been touched at all. We're going to go in, go in mixer, we're going to go to throttle, edit. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our throttle cut. So we expand that, active condition, I'm going to flip my switch into my throttle cut position. Always use the same one. Always, always, always use the same throttle cut setup on all your airplanes, all your aircraft, all your quads. It has to be instinctive. In my case, I've swapped the two position switches here, so my momentary's on the left and my two positions on the right. So two position away, up and away is safe for me. So all my switches, by default, the safest position is always up and away. That means full rates is up. So just move here, if I've got my rates here or here, full rates is up. My stabilization off is up. My flaps up are up. Anything else that I want, I do random stuff on these two switches. Those will be things like, often enough, this is my vario and altimeter readouts on here, but again, up and away is off. Up and away. That way I can take the radio out of the box and I could set all the default positions that are safe by feel. You don't have to do the same one, but you should be consistent on how you do it. So we're going to go and set the switch position and confirm that. So now we've got SH. We're not going to use sticky. I'll just demonstrate. So we've got, you can see the red line is flat in the curve. That means throttle cut's on. And you can go here and note when you hit throttle cut, it doesn't go all the way down until you get all the way down. Trigger value Turn that up to 100. Now throttle cut will always engage. Behaves a little different with sticky. We're not going to get into that. So right now we're ready to actually do the initial servo setup of the engine, because you've got your throttle cut, so your carb barrel fully closed, and I set this up so that with the servo, I put it into this condition, set the servo so carb barrel is fully closed, and then I set my max throttle percent, or so that adjust it so that there's no binding at 100% and the carb's fully open. So that's the procedure. Set carb closed and then adjust the output, the max value for carb fully open. That way you've got the most linear throw. And I don't do that max fully open in my throttle mixer. I always do that in my outputs. So I can't add any mix after the fact that'll overdrive that servo in either direction. Now, as you'll probably have noted, we still don't have an idle point. And it's not set in the throttle cut or throttle hold. What you do is you move down here and there's a line called low position trim. When you set low position trim on, it moves the trimmer function from being zero based, so being a range around zero, to being based with all the way down at minus 100. With 25% trim range, that'll run the trim from 0 to minus 50 in terms of channel value, and therefore your center point is right at minus 75%. So we're going to go ahead and turn this on and pay attention to what that throttle curve does. There you go. It is now based at an adjustable point, and watch that move all the way up to minus 50, all the way down to 0. I'll just turn the beeper on for a little bit.
Trim center.
And turn that off. So there you have it. Quick and easy. This is the procedure you need to do for glow. For gas, just to be clear, you want your throttle cut on a separate channel that's controlling your ignition system, so you can turn your ignition system off remotely. That's far, far safer than relying on the carb to kill the engine in a gasser, because if the ignition's still live, the engine can be flipped back on one way or another by as little as one flip of a prop. And glow, if you've got the carb closed and no glow heat on, you're not going to start the engine. It's just not going to work. For diesel, you might have to be careful because those will technically fire on compression alone as long as they're getting air, so be careful with them. There you have it. Throttle cut setup and adjustable idle for glow and nitro engines.